Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we are talking about Grendel, the game of crime and mayhem, designed by Laura Cameron and Sin-Fung Lim, and published by Off the Page Games, with illustrations by Matt Wagner and others, and graphic design by Sebastian Kozner. And I do apologize if I mispronounced any of those names. Now, before I get started, I'm going to move these pieces off because just the size of them, as you can see, they cast a bit of a shadow, and I'll explain what they do in just a minute. But also, before I get started, thank you to Off the Page Games for sending me this prototype so I can make this video. And obviously, it is still in the prototype phase, and some of the rules may change as well as some of the components. Now, what this game is this is a game that is based on the graphic novel series Grendel, which is a kind of dark game of, well, crime, because Grendel is not a hero. He is an assassin, crime lord type guy. And so you have that, you have the police, you have the mob, and you have Argent, which is the rival to Grendel. Now, I haven't read it. That's my Wikipedia research, and that's about all I know about it. And that's really all I know about it, but that's what this game is. And it plays out in a bit of an area control style game. And this is kind of the aftermath of a two-player game that I just played, a solo game I should say that I just played, and then I kind of put some other pieces back on the board, because all four factions will always be present even if no one is playing them. And as I said, it's going to be an area control style game in which you're going to wind up scoring these three areas of New York, and you'll be gaining points for each of the different sections in each of the different boroughs that you're going to be playing with in the city. And I can't tell you too much more about how it plays because each of the four factions plays a completely different game. The green mob are doing a dice placement game. The purple Argent is doing a deck building / push your luck style game. The red Grendel is doing a bag builder, while the police are doing a rondel. So all totally different. Now, if you are not interested in how this game is played and want to jump ahead to my final thoughts, then you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. And I'm going to very broadly go over how the different characters play, just because we don't want this video to be 40 minutes long. But at its core, what's going to happen is each player is going to get to take their turn, and it's going to allow them to put new units out on the board, or their influence out on the board, and also, more importantly, put their aggression into these buildings. So you'll see here, this is Queens. Now, what will happen is, as it's out there, you'll be taking different actions, and I'll mention briefly how this happens, but as you're taking actions, you'll be putting aggression tokens into the three different buildings from the three different boroughs. So Queens is right here, and then we also have Manhattan and we have Brooklyn, and they all have their own building. And the tokens that you're putting in, hopefully it zooms in on there, are either 1, 2, or 3 aggression value. And the less aggression points you get, the larger and heavier the token is going to be. And so what will be happening is as you're playing through the game, people will be dropping in tokens into the building here. And as each different player has their own color tokens that they're dropping in, eventually it will collapse like it just did there. And you'll see the banner here has fallen down. But then you're going to pick it up, and all the factions will get to use their aggression. And I will talk about that in just a minute, how that goes. But after everyone's used all their aggression, you will score the borough that you are having the mayhem happen in. So in this case, the way it would work is, after we do all our stuff, again, I'll explain that in a minute, we would look. If any of the regions has 3 or more factions in it, it does not score. So this region right here can't score. This region right here cannot score. This region right here cannot score. This region here could score. And then each of the different factions scores those differently. The police, for example, they score a faction, they score their point if they are in the region and they have the most units. So they would get 1 point for that. The mob, they score if they're in an area and they have 2 unique pieces. So this guy and this guy, or maybe this guy that token, that's how they score. Grendel scores just by having his fear tokens in the region. That's how he scores. And the Argent scores by having his tokens in the region as well. So in this case, if this was the setup of the round, Grendel and the Argent would score for this. There we go. The police would score for this one. The mob would score for this one and this one. Grendel would score here and nobody would score there. And so that's what you are striving to do. Now, again, very briefly, let's talk about how each of the different characters do that. So starting with the Argent. So the Argent's always going to have the ability to, once per turn, just drop an aggression token into a tower that he has his presence in the region. But at its core, what he's going to be doing is he will be drawing action cards and playing them out, watching the number of skulls that he has. Because if he ever gets 4 or more skulls, then he busts and he loses some of his potential. But at any time, he can say, I'm going to stop there. Or again, if he goes too far, there are some ways he can mitigate that, but he'll lose some of his actions and he'll lose his bonus action. Once he decides to stop, he gets to take all of the different actions. And those actions might be move his ambush tokens around the board. That's how he's going to score points. It might be destroy another player's flat cardboard token that they have, which is a way to weaken them or remove their ability to get points. It might be move. It might be punch something to harm it. It might be draw a card. It might be put aggression in the bag. And there's also the ability, this symbol, which allows him to upgrade his deck of cards. Then we have the mob. And the mob's going to be rolling 4 dice, and they're going to pick 3 of them. And they can do a variety of things. They can do a recruit, put anything here, and that'll allow them to draw a card and place out one of their mob bosses and 4 mooks. Or down here, they'll be able to do all the different abilities they've unlocked, except as the game goes, they will start with fewer of these that they can do, and as they put them out onto the board, that will unlock new abilities that a die here will do. They can put the same die on these 2 spots, and if they do, then they get to do all the stuff that kind of goes down this crime racket spree that they're doing there. And you'll notice these kind of outlines because all of these different spots can be upgraded as you're going through the game. And that's the broad overview of how they work. Now, the police have their 2 cars that are going to go around this rondel here. And wherever the cars stop, they get to do those actions. And you see these little police badges here. As you're going through the game, you can get them and add them onto the different spots to give you more and more abilities. And you have your police wagons over here, which as they go out, they will give you more abilities, and they will also arrest different bad guys, and those tokens will go on there. And broadly speaking, that's how the police work. Now, Grendel is a bag builder, and so you'll draw 3 tokens out of the bag, and then you'll get to place them wherever you want onto the board. And then you get to do whatever symbol is below it, and everything to the left. So in this case, you could move 2. But if I also place this one right here, I could do a little basically teleporting to your fear tokens and then move 2 more. If I had this one, I could upgrade one of my fear tokens, so take it from this side to this side so it's hard to get rid of, then do my little teleportation, and then move 2 spaces. And then anytime you fill up completely one of these rows, because they stay out there, then you take one of them, you discard it, and you pick 2 wild tokens, and you put them in your bag as well as these right here, and it empties out. Each of the different symbols has a bonus that you're going to get if you match the location. So if I put the rose in the rose spot, I get to add an extra aggression token. And the shock fork lets me kind of change the chits that I drew out of the bag, and so on and so forth. And each of the wild ones gives you an extra bonus as well. And that is how Grendel overall works. Now, the only other thing that I need to briefly cover is the mayhem phase. And this works basically the same for all of the players. So what's going to happen is, when you dump out the building, each player will have a certain amount of aggression that they've put in with those 1, 2, or 3 tokens. And so you'll count up however much they have. Let's say Argent got 6. I would slide this over here. And there's ways to get more aggression, discarding cards, and so on and so forth. But then what's going to happen is each player will get to take a turn where they spend 3 aggression. And that's what this thing is down here. I have a total of 6, but I have to spend 3 on my turn. So maybe I move 1 space, or maybe I punch a weak grunt, or maybe I have all 3 and I'm going to punch a captain and knock him out. Or perhaps I'm going to spend 2 to take a token that's in the space where I am and get rid of that. Or maybe I will play some of the cards that I have, which will all do different things and have different costs in the top left corner. For example, right there, there's a 2, and I will take a brief pause. This is, again, just a prototype, but one of the fancier cards you'll see, kind of the foiling on there. This is an example of what some of the deluxe bits might look like. But you're going to go through and you're going to spend your 3, and then the next player will get to spend their 3. And basically what you're doing is you are trying to get the region that's scoring into a position where you're going to score and the other players are not going to. But then, after you've spent your 3, you'll slide this on down, and the next time it's your turn, you can spend your next 3. So you have to spend it in 3s. You can't save any between Mayhem rounds. And if something were to happen to say I started with 7 and I had 1 left in my last turn, I would simply spend 1. Now, here's the other catch. Once a player reaches 0, they will score the points that they're going to get for that region. The other player is going to keep going, and they may change the board state to where if you scored again immediately, you would have more or fewer points, but each player scores as soon as they've gotten to the 0. And you're simply going to play until all 3 of the towers have triggered. Then you do kind of one final scoring of the whatever 2 regions scored first, and whoever's the most points is going to win the game. So, what do I like about this game? The very first thing is the aesthetic of the game is really good. The board is decently sparse. However, what that does is it makes it really easy to know what is happening where things are. It's very easy to read the board. And I know often I will talk about games of this ilk and I'll say, the board's boring. But in this case, especially when you start playing with the solo mode, it's really, really good that it's this simple and clean. But to counterbalance that, the cards are great. The artwork on those cards is just fantastic. It's really, really good, and I really, really like it. The next thing is, each of the factions is completely asymmetric. As I very, very briefly showed you, because I did not want this to be a 35-minute video, the mob is a dice placement game. Argent is a deck builder / push your luck style game. The police are a rondel, and Grendel is a bag builder, and each of them plays really differently. And you even dig down a little further into 2 of the characters. You're really just one character, Argent and Grendel, and you're putting out fear and ambush locations around the board, while the mob and the police have armies of troops that you're sending out that you have to deal with in different ways. And it's really satisfying to, every time you play, have a completely different experience. So you can play this game 4 times, and it'll be 4 times before you start to feel like you're playing the same game twice. So really, really cool. But the coup de grace are those towers. I don't understand how they work, but what they do is they give you this intense, I don't know when things are going to happen. And when you couple that with the fact that they've made the lower value tokens heavier, meaning you can trigger a mayhem phase sooner potentially, but you get less from it, is masterful. I love, love, love how that works. Also, with that in mind, I really like the vibe that, at least in the games that I have played, you have this vibe that there is an escalation of mayhem going on. Because in all likelihood, there are people been putting their aggression tokens in all 3 towers. And in the first game that we played, the first tower tripped. We did that mayhem phase. The very first person took the next turn, the tower tripped. We did the mayhem phase. The very next turn the person took, the tower tripped. So it can just really, really escalate. I did check with designers. That is not always how it happens, but it just happened to be a few times for me. But I really liked the way that went, that it just escalates, and so you're doing all this planning at the beginning. You have 3 locations, and then it's, oh, mayhem happened. Now everyone's on edge, and oh, mayhem happens. Really cool. And of course, the towers themselves are it's just really neat. It's just a really bit neat of board game craft. I don't know what else to call it. It's really, really cool. So all of that I really enjoy. I also think the game plays pretty darn quickly for what it is, which keeps it interesting. The game says about 30 minutes per player. That's probably about right. I think if everyone's kind of become a master of the game, then you can probably knock that down to a 4-player game in about an hour 45 or so. But it's a well-paced game. It feels tight. Nothing feels wasted in the game, and I really do appreciate that. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is the teaching of the game can feel a bit belabored and long because you have these 4 completely different games that are going on. And the draft rulebook that I have, it recommends have the first player go, teach them how they play, and then teach the next player kind of as you go around. And I think that works in the way that we did it because I was playing with a whole bunch of gamers. I just pulled apart my rulebook because it was just a printout and just kind of passed everyone out their stuff, and we just kind of went through our own, and we were able to jump in pretty quickly. But there is going to be a learning curve to this game because the factions are so very, very different. Even though the core things of like punching and luring and those things, that's all the same. It'll take a little bit longer than you think to kind of jump into your first game. The next thing I'll say is when you start hitting the mayhem phases, it is possible to just feel like you're doing nothing. And that is your own fault because you didn't put a lot of aggression in the towers, but it is possible for one to drop. In fact, the first time I played, the guy playing the mob, one of the towers, he had 0. He just had nothing in there, so he didn't really get to do anything. I mean, he could have discarded cards to get a little bit of aggression, but at the end of the day, he just didn't have much aggression, so he couldn't do much. And in a game when you're only going to have 3 mayhem phases, it's kind of a bummer if you're like, oh, wow, I've totally missed or basically missed out on that entire phase. And then the only other thing that I will point out is, even though I just praise this kind of escalation and mayhem that you can have, it can also at the same time feel a little bit unsatisfying if the towers just start tripping one after the other, because a big part of the fun is the planning phase. Like, that's when you get to do your mini game. When you get to the mayhem phase, everyone's playing the same game. Their cards are different, but everyone's doing the same thing. And so when you get there, if it's just been tripped, it can feel sometimes like you've been robbed of perhaps one of the more interesting parts of the game. And again, I have to clarify again that the designers told me that while it's not unique to my experience that happened in the big game I played and also all the solo games that I played, it does happen. So it doesn't happen all the time, but that is something that can occur, and that might feel like a little bit of letdown to you. And then the last thing I'll say is, at the time of my recording of this video, there is only a single option to play solo, and that is the mob is run by an AI. And that's a bummer. I want to be able to AI the other 3. And I get it. That's a lot of work. But hey, if I do feel like if you're going to have the option to do something, if you're going to be able to play solo, then I want to be able to play solo with all the factions. Even if it's just one more. Even if it's just give me the police or something out there so I can play the mob versus the police or something like that. I think it would really, really pop if you had that possibility. But all in all, I'm really impressed with this game. I don't know this graphic novel at all. I know nothing about it. I'm kind of interested to go check it out just because the art's really cool, but I know literally nothing about it. I don't have a clue. And so I can't speak to how well this game really grasps the theme of Grendel. But it is cool, and off the page consistently does something that I think is unique. Every single game they put out, they're doing something that other games aren't doing. Has another game done something like this? I'm sure someone has, but you don't see it very often. This is not just another area control game. This is not just another worker placement game. They're constantly doing something different and something unique, and that is really cool. And part of that really makes me like this game even more. But even when I step back from that, this is so cool, these tower things, and asymmetric, woo! There is a very tight, very clean game underneath there, which I really do appreciate. There you have it, folks. That is Grendel. As always, if I made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can get that in the Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.